Get out of my lobby, this place isn't for your kind. The words didn't slip out by accident. They were delivered like policy loud certain and rehearsed. Arthur Sterling, manager of the Horizon Grand Hotel in downtown Seattle, stood behind the front desk with his arms crossed and judgment written all over his face. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't hiding. He said it so the entire lobby could hear. He looked right at her, at the black woman in plain clothes, and decided right then and there that she didn't belong. What he didn't know was that in exactly 9 minutes, the woman standing in front of him would fire him. And every single member of his team right there in the very lobby where he had just tried to humiliate her. Before we get into this, tell me where you're watching from. Comment your city below. And if this moment stopped you in your tracks the way it did the guests around her, hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Now let's rewind to how this moment started. Imani Wallace walked through the glass doors of the Horizon Grand alone. No assistant, no designer purse, no brand labels, just a black t-shirt, fitted jeans, and calm eyes that had seen this scenario before. She took slow, confident steps across the marble floor. Her sneakers barely made a sound, but her presence sent a ripple through the lobby. She approached the front desk. Behind it stood Arthur, 48, flanked by 2 clerks, Megan Finch, 30, with a tight ponytail and tighter smile, and Ravi Sharma, 27, arms folded, eyes already narrowed in suspicion. None of them greeted her. None of them smiled. They just looked her up and down like a problem waiting to happen. I have a reservation, Imani said evenly. Penthouse suite. The name's Wallace. Arthur squinted at her like he misheard. That's a very high-tier room. Are you sure you booked the right hotel? Imani didn't answer the insult. She calmly slid her ID and black credit card across the counter. Arthur picked them up with 2 fingers holding the card like it might stain him. Strange, he muttered. This looks suspicious. Megan pressed a button on the desk. Her voice rang out over the intercom. Security, we may have an unauthorized guest trying to access one of our premium suites, possibly fraudulent. Imani's expression didn't change. Her voice stayed low. I'm not here for trouble. I'm here for my room, Ravi scoffed. You know people try this all the time. Fancy cards, they found fake names, usually hoping we won't check. From across the room, Chloe Grant, a travel blogger visiting from San Francisco, had already raised her phone. I'm filming this, she whispered to her friend, Ethan Cole. Then louder. This is being posted. People need to see this. Ethan started live streaming. We're at the Horizon Grand in Seattle, he narrated. And we're watching something ugly happen in real time. Isabel Vargas, the young concierge, standing off to the side, glanced up from her desk. Her eyes met Imani's. Something passed between them. Silent, swift recognition, maybe, or concern. Isabel took a step forward, but Arthur cut her off with a glance. She doesn't belong here, he snapped. Imani took out her phone and sent a silent tap. On the other end, in a corporate office 3 blocks away, her executive assistant, Zoe Evans, picked up immediately. It's happening, Imani said quietly. Zoe didn't hesitate. The system's ready. Arthur still held her card, flipping it like he was waiting for it to confess something. You know, he said louder this time. We've seen this scam before. People come in, claim to have bookings, flash a high-limit card, and disappear the second we call the bank. Well, not this time. He turned to Ravi and handed him the card. Lock it up. Ravi took it eagerly and walked to a small cabinet. He opened a drawer behind the desk, revealing a brushed steel safe with exaggerated care. He placed the card inside and slammed the door shut. You're done here, he said with a smile. Chloe, filming, exclaimed. They just took her card. Ethan stepped closer. That's theft. That's not policy. Imani didn't move. Her voice stayed calm. You're going to regret this." At 24, Imani had walked into a boutique hotel in Atlanta after a red-eye flight. She was dressed in sweats, exhausted from meetings, and had a confirmed reservation. The man at the desk looked her up and down and said, "You don't look like someone who'd stay here." He told her the system was down and she could come back when the manager's around. She slept in her car that night. The next morning, she began outlining a business plan that would grow into one of the largest hospitality groups in the country now. Standing in a lobby she owned in a hotel under her brand, the same tone, the same assumption, the same kind of man tried to erase her again. Arthur leaned forward. "Your reservation's canceled. We don't tolerate deception. You're holding up real guests." Imani didn't flinch. "You mean the ones watching this right now?" She gestured towards Chloe and Ethan, who were still filming. Other guests had stopped what they were doing. Some were staring, some were whispering, some were clearly uncomfortable. Isabel looked on, jaw tight. Megan stepped in. "You need to leave now." Imani held her gaze. "Are you sure?" Megan's tone dripped with confidence. "Positive, or we'll call the authorities." Arthur smirked. "Go ahead, make a scene. It won't end well for you." Imani didn't blink. "That's the last time you speak to me like that." Isabel finally stepped forward. "She's right. I saw her name in our system this morning. Her reservation is valid." Arthur turned to her sharply. "One more word, and you're gone too." Imani reached for her phone again. This time her voice was louder. "Zoe, log this moment. Lock in the video timestamps." Zoe's voice came through clearly. "Logged. System's ready." Ethan leaned toward the front desk, pointing to the card through the safe's glass window. "It says I. Wallace, VIP. It's real. She's real." Arthur scoffed. "Anyone can make a fake card." "People like her." Imani interrupted. "Finish that sentence." "Go on." But he didn't. The words died in his throat as he noticed the growing circle of eyes around them. Imani stepped forward, calm, controlled, but every syllable carried weight. "You've just made the worst mistake of your professional life," she said. Arthur smiled, like he still held power. "You think so?" She stared into him. "No, I know so." And as the tension gripped the lobby like a tightening noose, no one, not Arthur, not Megan, not Ravi, had any idea who she truly was. But they were about to find out. Ravi Sharma's voice rang out across the lobby with forced authority, holding up the small silver key to the safe like it was a trophy. "This card is now company property," he declared. "And until the bank verifies it, you're not getting it back." He grinned, smug, performative, sure of himself. Behind him, the safe door clicked shut with a cold finality. But Ravi didn't see the storm he'd just invited. Imani Wallace stood there unwavering. Her face was unreadable, her silence more commanding than any outburst. Arthur leaned in again, eyes flicking toward the slowly growing crowd. "You're wasting everyone's time," he said. "Walk out now or we'll make that choice for you." That's when Megan, emboldened by the backing of her manager and Ravi's theatrics, stepped out from behind the desk, straightened her blazer, and reached for Imani's arm. "You've been warned it's time for you to leave." The moment her hand made contact, the entire atmosphere in the lobby shifted. Gasps erupted. Chloe Grant's phone caught the movement instantly. "She just grabbed her," she shouted, already uploading the clip to Reddit with a simple caption, "This is happening live at Horizon Grand." Ethan's live stream now had over 100 watchers, most of them flooding the chat with shock and disbelief. Isabel Vargas stepped forward, her voice shaking with restrained outrage. "You can't put your hands on a guest," she said sharply. "Her reservation is valid." Megan spun around, eyes flashing. You stay out of this if you want your job. But Isabel didn't back down. She looked at Imani, who still hadn't moved an inch, and took a small step closer to her. I won't lie for you, she said to Arthur. That was the exact moment Arthur dropped all pretense. She's trying to scam us, he hissed. People like her always think they can play the system. His tone was lower now, more venomous. But the words reached the ears of at least 3 guests standing nearby. One of them, a gray-haired woman holding her phone just a little higher, said to no one in particular, I can't believe what I'm hearing. Another, a man in a navy suit, leaned toward Ethan's stream and said, You getting all this? Ethan nodded. All of it. In the center of this storm stood Imani, still perfectly still. She brought her phone back to her ear. Zoe, she said calmly, escalate the internal system, begin audit documentation. I want every word logged from this point forward on the other end. Zoe. Evans's voice was crisp. Understood time stamped and recorded. Do you want Dana on standby? Imani replied. Give me 1 more minute, as she said it. Ravi leaned in over the desk and shouted loud enough to be heard by the far wall. You're a fraud! Lady, you think a card gets you in here. Go back to wherever you came from. A chorus of murmurs rose from the lobby. Isabel was now fully out from behind the concierge podium, standing shoulder to shoulder with Imani. I've worked here for 3 years, she said, her voice firm. And I've seen this pattern before. Every time a guest like her walks in alone, confident, dressed down, you treat them like criminals. Arthur's eyes narrowed. And every time someone questions it, Isabel continued. You say it's policy, but it's not. It's you. Backstory seeped into Imani's mind. She was 16, dressed in her Sunday clothes, waiting in a hotel lobby in Charlotte. Her parents were late. A clerk walked up to her and said, This area's for guests only. She tried to explain, but the woman didn't listen. She was escorted to the sidewalk like a loiterer. The shame stayed in her bones for years. It didn't make her small. It made her sharp. It made her build. Arthur wasn't finished. He turned toward Isabel. Enough, I want her out now, or I'll have security escort both of you. Megan, who'd been silent since Chloe started filming again, added quickly. She refused to provide valid ID. This is a breach. I'm reporting it. But the tension was already turning against them. Ethan, still filming, turned the camera toward his own face. Just to be clear, he said. We're watching a guest be harassed by hotel staff after providing her name card and ID, and now they're physically trying to remove her. This is not just bad service. This is disgusting. Imani turned to Ravi, her voice no louder than before. Return my card now. Ravi leaned over the counter, smirking. Or what Imani's eyes didn't move. Or you'll be locked out of the Horizon system for life. No employment, no references, no appeal. Megan snorted. You don't speak for Horizon. But Isabel spoke up immediately. She does. Arthur's voice snapped like a whip. You're out of line. Isabel, you don't even know who she is, Chloe interjected from the side. She does. We all do. She turned the camera back to Imani. Look at how she's standing. Look at how calm she is. That's not someone begging for service. That's someone letting you dig your own grave. Imani's voice stayed steady. Ravi, one last chance. Ravi looked unsure for the first time. Arthur tried to salvage the moment. This isn't about anything personal. It's about protocol. But his words came too late. Chloe and Ethan's videos were already spreading, and guests were whispering about what they'd just seen. One man said, I've stayed here for years. Never again. A young woman holding a carry-on suitcase turned to Isabel and asked, Is she really who I think she is? Isabel didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Then the twist that shifted the lobby's temperature completely. Isabel stepped forward, voice louder now. This isn't the first time Arthur ignored complaints like this. He's been warned. I logged 3 of them last month, 2 from solo women of color, all dismissed. Arthur's face flushed red. That's a lie. Ethan swung the camera toward him. You sure? Imani looked around slowly. Every phone was raised now, every guest paying attention. She said to no one in particular, but loud enough for every person to hear. Your time running this place unchecked is over. Arthur tried one more desperate move. Fine, if you won't leave, I'll call the cops myself. Imani smiled. Please do. And for a moment, Arthur hesitated. Because for the first time, he saw something in her face that unsettled him. Not fear, not uncertainty, power-controlled, silent, and far beyond his reach. Guests began to move subtly but deliberately, stepping between Imani and the front desk. They didn't know her name yet, but they knew enough. One woman rolled her suitcase directly into Megan's path. Another man pulled his phone charger from the desk outlet and stood beside Isabel. Ethan turned his phone around, capturing the growing crowd. They're protecting her now, he said into the stream. Imani, still in the center, took a single step forward and said one sentence. This lobby belongs to me. The words didn't shout. They didn't need to. Ravi's smirk faltered. Megan looked down. Arthur blinked, and in that split-second silence, the lobby once hostile began to turn. How would you have responded if someone tried to push you out of a hotel you owned? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Throw her out now. Arthur's voice cracked across the marble lobby like a gavel, desperate to regain control that had already slipped through his fingers. The lobby wasn't quiet anymore. Phones were raised. Whispers were now open protests. But Arthur, red-faced and trembling with authority, he no longer truly held, pressed forward anyway. She's trespassing. She's a liar, he bellowed. He turned toward the intercom and slammed his hand down on the button. Ravi's voice crackled across the entire lobby speaker system. To all staff, unauthorized individual in the lobby, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage with this guest. Fraud alert. The moment the announcement ended, the silence that followed was heavier than the words themselves. Imani didn't flinch, but the guests did. Chloe Grant shouted from the corner. She's not a fraud, we're recording everything. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury. Ethan's live stream view count had jumped past 2,000. Comments rolled in like waves. That's theft unreal. How is this happening in a luxury hotel? A mother with her teenage daughter backed away from the check-in line, whispering they're going to regret this. Meanwhile, Megan, shaken but still following Arthur's lead, grabbed Imani's arm again and yanked her toward the exit. Let's go! You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed through clenched teeth. That was when Isabel Vargas stepped between them. Physically, the youngest staff member in the room, the only one to speak up consistently, stood shoulder to shoulder with Imani. Don't touch her again, she said loud and clear. Megan froze. You'll be fired, she spat. Isabel didn't back down. Then fire me, she snapped. But you're not putting your hands on her. Arthur surged forward, his frustration boiling over. Do you even know who she is? He barked at Isabel. She's a fraud. Look at her. He gestured at Imani's t-shirt, her jeans, her sneakers, like it all proved something. People who stay in penthouse suites don't look like that. Imani's voice was quiet, measured. You keep saying that word fraud, like it'll make your mistake disappear. She took one small step forward. The distance between them closed like a noose tightening around Arthur's narrative. At 29, Imani had flown into Los Angeles for a conference. She'd been wearing a navy pantsuit, professional, but not extravagant. The man behind the desk had looked at her ID, then at her, then again at the card. This can't be you, he'd said. "We'll need a second form of ID." She provided one, then another. But they still made her wait while verifying 2 hours. Meanwhile, she watched 3 white men walk in and get sweets without even showing ID. That night, she drafted the policy she would later implement in her own hotels. 0 tolerance for guest profiling. That moment lived in her bones, and now so did this one. "Get security." Arthur barked at Ravi, who had stepped away from the desk and now hovered near the office hallway, uncertain. "Call them in now," but Ravi hesitated. His confidence had cracked, because in front of him stood not a woman begging for entry, but someone who knew something he didn't, and worse, guests were watching. Chloe's phone moved from face to face, capturing every twitch of guilt, every flinch of power. Ethan, still live-streaming, turned toward a guest standing nearby. "Sir, what are you seeing here?" the man replied without hesitation. "I see someone getting thrown out of a hotel she clearly belongs in." Arthur spun. "That's slander. She hasn't proven anything." Imani calmly turned her phone toward the crowd. Would anyone like proof, Ethan immediately called out, "Show them." But she didn't lift a badge or pull out a contract. Instead, she turned to Isabel and asked softly, "Do you see my name in the reservation system?" Isabel nodded. "Yes, it's under I. Wallace Penthouse, checked in remotely. And is the VIP tag attached to it?" Imani continued. Isabel nodded again. Yes, marked as executive-level override owner-level clearance. The lobby fell quiet. Arthur's eyes darted. That could have been faked. She could have hacked in Chloe. Snapped. "You really think someone walked in off the street, hacked your system, and brought 2,000 witnesses with them?" Megan, suddenly pale, looked down at the floor. Ravi stepped forward, hesitantly. "I locked the card in the safe under your instruction." "Art, what if we're wrong?" Imani turned toward him. "You were told to steal from me. That's what you did. But you had a choice." Ravi's mouth opened, then shut again. Then the crowd shifted. A guest, an older woman with white hair and a floral scarf, moved forward. She positioned herself between Imani and Megan and said simply, "You're not laying a hand on her again." Another man joined, then a woman with a stroller. Within seconds, a loose half-circle had formed in front of Imani, as if the guests themselves had drawn a boundary. Arthur stood behind the desk, suddenly looking much smaller than he had moments ago. Imani looked around at the human barrier that had risen without her asking. "This is what happens," she said softly. When silence stops being an option. Ethan turned his phone to the crowd. "They're standing with her now," he said into the camera. "And I don't think they're going anywhere." Arthur's desperation hit its peak. He shouted over the lobby noise, "You're all being manipulated! She's playing you!" And then Ravi, still holding the intercom mic, whispered something barely audible. But the whole lobby heard it as it echoed through the speakers. "She owns the place, doesn't she? It hung in the air like smoke." Chloe slowly panned her phone toward Imani's face. "Do you?" she asked, breathless. Isabel stepped forward. "She does." Gasps rippled across the room. A man near the lounge chairs whispered, "Wait, this is her hotel." Megan turned to Arthur in horror. "You said she was lying." Arthur didn't speak. Ethan looked into his lens. This is the moment everything changed. Imani stepped forward again now, past Isabel, past the half-circle of guests, right up to the front desk where Arthur stood frozen. "You wanted me out," she said evenly. "You framed me. You called me a thief. And you humiliated me in my own lobby." Arthur opened his mouth, but no words came out. From her phone, Zoe's voice came through, loud and clear. "Imani Dana is ready." Do you want me to patch her through? Imani's eyes didn't leave Arthur's. Yes, right now. She tapped the screen once, and Dana Webb's voice, sharp and deliberate, came through the speaker. Imani, everything's prepared. We're standing by for your authorization. Imani took a breath. Terminate. Arthur Sterling. Terminate Megan Finch. Terminate Ravi Sharma. Immediate removal from the Horizon system. Freeze their access credentials and log today's incident for legal audit. A beat of silence. Confirmed. Dana said, processing now. And in that instant, Arthur's access badge buzzed red. So did Megan's. So did Ravi's. They were locked out live in front of every guest. No shouting, no theatrics, just justice. Quiet, complete, irreversible, and in the eyes of every guest present. A single truth became clear. This woman hadn't just defended herself. She had dismantled a system in 9 minutes flat. What would you have done if you witnessed this? Let us know in the comments below. Arthur Sterling's last shred of composure shattered the moment his access badge buzzed red. He stared at it stunned, like it had betrayed him. Ravi's face drained of color as his own badge blinked the same error, locking him out of the Horizon system in real time. Megan froze, lips parted in disbelief, still gripping the edge of the counter as if hanging on would somehow keep her job from vanishing beneath her feet. But the lobby had already shifted. What once felt like a theater of dominance now pulsed with rebellion. Isabel Vargas, no longer the silent concierge, stood tall beside Imani, her jaw tight, her voice steady. "They've been removed," she said, loud enough for every guest to hear. "They don't speak for Horizon anymore," Arthur erupted. "This is illegal. You can't just— this isn't how hotels operate." He turned to Megan, desperate. "Call corporate, get someone on the line now." But Megan's hands trembled as she checked her phone blocked. Horizon's internal system had shut down her staff login credentials. I'm locked out," she whispered, panic blooming across her face. "Everything's gone." Ravi tried to step toward the safe to retrieve Imani's card, but Isabel raised her hand. "Stop right there," she commanded. "You're no longer authorized to handle guest property. Step away from the counter." Ravi hesitated, then backed off slowly, and then the final push. Arthur, boiling in embarrassment, lashed out in the worst way possible. "Do you really think this circus makes you a leader?" he snarled at Imani. "You tricked your way in. You humiliated us in public. You'll be sued for this." But his voice cracked, just slightly. When he said it, he was no longer in control, and he knew it. Imani, still calm, tilted her head slightly. "You think leadership is about hiding things, Arthur manipulating perception?" She gestured to the guests around them. "Leadership is when people who've been ignored for too long finally speak up, and they're heard right on cue." A woman in the crowd raised her voice. "You never took my complaint seriously last spring," she said. "I emailed about an incident at check-in, and no one followed up. You were the one who responded and dismissed it." Arthur turned sharply to see her face, then looked away, recognizing her. Another voice. "I was charged twice for a room and got no response until I threatened legal action." A man chimed in from behind the lounge chairs. "I asked for an ADA-compliant room and was told none were available, then watched someone else check in and get one." One by one, guest voices became a chorus of past slights and denied accountability. Isabel stepped forward again, now emboldened by truth and consequence. "I logged 3 complaints in the last 2 months alone about biased behavior at the front desk. They were dismissed every time." Arthur signed off on the dismissals himself. Megan backed up until she hit the wall, eyes darting between guests and her former co-workers. "Art, what is this?" she whispered. "They're turning on us." Arthur's voice was now reduced to a whimper. "They're just angry. This'll blow over." But it didn't. It grew. Ethan panned his live stream across the lobby. "This is what a reckoning looks like," he said to his viewers. "They pushed too far, and now the guests are speaking." Then, the moment that cemented it all, Chloe Grant pulled up her Reddit post. Now viral, hundreds of comments, dozens of reposts, screenshots of Ravi's intercom announcement. The quote, "This card is now company property." Beneath it, a clip of Megan grabbing Imani's arm. Another of Arthur yelling people like her don't belong here. It was spreading like wildfire. "It's out there now," Chloe said aloud. "Everyone's seeing it." Arthur's desperation snapped again. He lunged toward the counter, shouting, "Delete, that's private property." But two guests stepped in his path. One of them, a quiet man with reading glasses and a messenger bag, simply said, "No, you don't get to silence this," the other guest. An elderly woman in a floral shawl held out her phone. "Your face is already online. Might want to think twice before making another threat." That was the tipping point. Megan turned to Imani, her voice shaking. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't mean for this to happen." But Imani didn't nod. She didn't offer comfort. She simply said, "You helped make it happen. You watched it happen." And then Arthur did something no one expected. He turned to Imani, his voice ragged, shoulders slumping. "Why didn't you say who you were?" he asked. "You set us up." Imani blinked. "No. I gave you every opportunity to treat me like any other guest. That was the test, and you failed it publicly." That was when Zoe's voice returned, now on speaker through Imani's phone. "Imani, the board's authorized full incident response. Dana's ready for your next steps." Imani looked across the lobby, scanning every stunned face. Every guest still holding a phone, still bearing witness. "Patch her through." Dana Webb's voice, crisp and measured, filled the air. "Arthur Sterling, Megan Finch, Ravi Sharma, effective immediately. Your employment with Horizon Hospitality Group is terminated. Your access has been revoked. Legal documentation is being prepared. Ms. Wallace will supervise next steps directly. All guests, please be advised new leadership will be addressing your concerns momentarily." The weight of the words hit like thunder. Ravi tried one last protest. "This is insane. We built this place," but Imani cut him off. "You built nothing. You guarded the door and turned away the very people we claim to serve." She turned to Isabel. "Please unlock the safe, retrieve my card." Isabel moved efficiently, professionally. She entered a new code, her own, and opened the safe. Imani's black card lay untouched, pristine. Isabel handed it back without a word, but her eyes were glassy with emotion. Then came the guests, one by one. They began clapping, not loud, not chaotic, but purposeful, measured. As if acknowledging something overdue, Imani looked out over them and spoke. Not with anger, but with certainty. This wasn't just about me. This was about every guest who was told their presence was a problem. About every complaint that disappeared. Every policy used to humiliate instead of serve. That ends today. Arthur, Megan, and Ravi stood behind the counter, stripped of title, of power, of audience. And yet the consequences had only begun. Imani turned back to her assistant through the phone. "Zoe, we're proceeding with full lobby-level reform. Prepare the statement and elevate Isabel Vargas's status. She'll be leading this location." "Yes, ma'am," Zoe replied. And with that, Imani Wallace stepped forward, no longer mistaken, no longer anonymous. She had just taken her hotel back one decision at a time. Imani Wallace stood at the center of the marble lobby, silent, composed, while the three disgraced employees she had just fired stood frozen behind the front desk faces, pale reputations shattered, and their power extinguished. Arthur's eyes, once filled with arrogant command, now flicked rapidly between the guests, the live streaming phones, and the woman he had just accused of being a fraud. Ravi stared blankly at the safe, now open and empty, its only contents. A black card he had mocked, resting securely in Imani's hand. Megan had gone quiet, lips slightly parted, her gaze locked on the floor, no longer daring to meet anyone's eyes around them. The guests remained fixed in place, unwilling to turn away. The tension had not eased. It had evolved into anticipation, as if everyone in the room knew they were on the edge of something permanent. Imani turned slowly facing the crowd. Then, adjusting the hem of her plain black t-shirt, she stepped forward and spoke not for the cameras, not for applause, but with the clear, unwavering tone of a woman who had earned the right to every word. "My name is Imani Wallace," she said. "I am the founder and CEO of Horizon Hospitality Group. And as of this moment, I am reclaiming this hotel, not just from the people who misused their roles, but from every excuse they ever hid behind." The words hit the lobby like a shockwave. Phones lowered slightly. Eyebrows rose. One guest audibly gasped, another whispered, "She owns it." The whole company. Ethan's live stream comments exploded in real time. CEO. This just flipped everything. What a move. Arthur stumbled forward. Wait, this isn't how we do things. You're the CEO, you should have. There's protocol, there are procedures, you ambushed us. No, Imani replied, never breaking eye contact. I walked in like every other guest, quiet, alone, respectful. The only thing I didn't bring was privilege, and you proved without prompting how your team responds to someone who doesn't look the part. Ravi shook his head slowly. We didn't know we couldn't have known. You didn't need to know, she snapped. That's the point. At that, Isabel Vargas stepped beside Imani. Her voice soft, but certain. I recognized the name when she checked in. I saw the sweet tag, the override clearance, I knew who she was. But I didn't speak up, not right away. I'm sorry for that. Imani turned to her. You did more than anyone else in this lobby. You told the truth, you stood up. And now you'll be promoted to Guest Services Director for this property. Effective today. Isabel's eyes widened, stunned. A few guests began to clap again, slower this time. Not for spectacle, but for justice. A moment of quiet triumph unfolded in the lobby. Megan spoke for the first time in minutes. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know what to do. Imani regarded her carefully. You had a choice, Megan. You made it when you pressed the intercom, when you grabbed my arm, when you laughed, when you watched your colleague lock away my card like I didn't matter. Then, without warning, Megan cracked. It was Arthur, she cried. He told us how to deal with people who didn't match our top-tier guests. He said we were just protecting the brand image. I thought it was normal. Arthur whipped his head around, furious. That's a lie. Imani raised a hand, stopping them both. No, it's not a lie. It's a confession, and we will document it. Dana's voice returned over the call, steady and cool. We've logged the admission. This will be escalated to the compliance and legal teams. A few guests nodded in approval. One woman holding her toddler said aloud, About time someone was held accountable. Ethan, still recording, spoke into the camera. She didn't just fire them, she exposed the whole system from the top down. Ravi stepped forward weakly. What happens to us now? You'll receive formal notice of termination, Imani said. Your names will be flagged across Horizon's hiring network. You're banned from future employment with any of our properties. And if we discover prior misconduct covered up under your supervision, further action will follow. Arthur stared at her like a man who had just realized he had underestimated the wrong person. All this because you wanted to prove a point. No, she said coldly. All this because I'm tired of people like you deciding who deserves respect based on appearances. From the crowd, Chloe raised her voice. They tried to erase her, and now she's rewriting the rules. Imani stepped aside, allowing Isabel behind the front desk. Reset the check-in system, suspend pending reservations flagged under Arthur's staff ID. We'll reach out to all affected guests and offer them compensation. Isabel nodded and got to work, hands steady, now empowered. Imani turned to the guests. If any of you experience mistreatment at this property today, or before, our internal team will be stationed in the lobby. I've instructed Zoe to open direct lines for all complaints, and we will respond within 48 hours. No form letters, no PR fluff, just answers. The room stood still, then began buzzing not with chaos, but clarity. Guests murmured in agreement. One elderly man tipped his hat and said thank you for not walking away. Imani nodded gently. I've walked away too many times, not anymore. Dana's voice came through again. Media outlets have picked up the footage. X and Reddit are circulating it without hashtags. The narrative is building, but you're in control. Imani gave a firm nod. Let them talk. Let the public see what happens when a company doesn't just apologize, but acts. Then she turned back toward Arthur, Megan, and Ravi. You're dismissed. Your personal belongings will be sent to you. Security will escort you from the premises. You are not to speak to or approach any guests. Isabel looked at her. Should I notify building security? No, Imani replied. Let them walk through the lobby. Let every guest see the consequence of unchecked behavior. As the three former staff members moved through the lobby under the weight of their own disgrace, no one stopped them. No one offered sympathy. Only the quiet murmurs of accountability followed them out. And once the doors closed behind them, Imani turned back to her guests and her staff, not with relief, but with resolve. This wasn't justice. This was a beginning. Reform starts now. And with those words, Horizon Grand Hotel stopped being just a name carved in stone and became the place where everything changed. The moment the glass doors sealed shut behind Arthur, Megan, and Ravi, the energy in the Horizon Grand lobby shifted from confrontation to transformation. Guests stood quietly absorbing what they had just witnessed. A top-down reckoning carried out not behind closed doors, but right in front of them, under crystal chandeliers, and beside gold-plated check-in counters. Imani Wallace, still composed in her plain black t-shirt and jeans, didn't pause. She turned to Isabel Vargas, now elevated from concierge to acting guest services director, and gave a clear directive: initiate the reform plan, start from the top. Isabel, no longer hesitant, nodded, and immediately began shutting down the existing reservation system, disabling every user login associated with the terminated staff. Done, she confirmed within moments. Imani pulled out her phone. Zoe, she said firmly, send out the internal alert. Notify regional compliance, diversity operations, and legal. I want a full audit of Horizon Grand's last 18 months guest complaint staff, conduct records and suppression logs. Zoe's reply was instant. Already in motion, the media's circling, but your voice is front and center. Dana's preparing the rollout briefing. Guests began to approach Isabel, many speaking softly, unsure if it was appropriate to offer support. One woman, clutching a reservation confirmation printout, whispered, "Thank you. I was scared to speak earlier." Isabel smiled gently. We're listening now. In the corner, Ethan Cole's live stream showed steady growth. Now past 10,000 viewers, his caption had updated to CEO reclaims hotel fires, entire staff in lobby, real-time reform. Comments flooded the screen. Chloe, now quiet for the first time since she began recording, approached Imani with her phone lowered. "Do you want me to keep posting?" she asked. Imani nodded. "Only truth, that's all I care about." Then she turned to the crowd. For years, Horizon Hospitality promised inclusion, but policies mean nothing if bias is ignored behind the desk. Today, that changes. She looked to Isabel again. "Reassign all staff training to begin within 72 hours. We'll bring in an independent firm, and every employee front desk concierge management will undergo recertification, no grandfather clauses, no excuses." As Imani spoke, Dana's voice came through on speaker once more. "We've approved your full reform plan. Local media is requesting a statement. We've confirmed your authority to implement procedural suspension of current operations for guest safety," Imani replied. "Then suspend front desk bookings temporarily. Isabel will manually handle VIP guests. Others will be redirected to our downtown partner location with a complimentary night." She turned to Isabel. "You okay with that load?" Isabel gave a single steady nod, more than okay. Around them, guests no longer looked like spectators. They looked like supporters. One man offered to help with luggage. A couple volunteered to pass out water bottles to waiting guests. From confrontation had grown cohesion. The lobby had become something different now. Part recovery room, part headquarters. And then came the twist that hardened Imani's calm into something sharper. A notification pinged on her screen, an internal flag from compliance. She opened it quietly, scanning the summary. Her jaw set as she read. Then she lifted her eyes and said to no one in particular, "Arthur didn't act alone." The lobby paused again. Dana's voice returned in her earpiece, this time lower, urgent. "We've pulled Horizon Grand's archived complaint records. Arthur submitted false summaries to regional headquarters. Complaints that were marked resolved were never investigated. And we found communications between him and former regional director Robert Price." Imani's voice dropped colder now. "Price retired 3 months ago under a cloud of HR violations. No one looked deeper because they said he was just old-fashioned." Zoe's voice came in. "Turns out he protected Arthur Megan, too." There was a pattern. Imani closed her eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to steady herself. Then she opened them crystal clear with resolve. "We're not just reforming this location," she said. "We're initiating a full Horizon-wide review. Every flagged employee, every buried complaint, every fake resolution." She turned to Ethan, who was still filming. "You can show this part," she said. "People need to know that rot starts from the root and we're digging it out." The guests around her nodded. Some looked stunned, others relieved. One woman in her 70s whispered, "I've waited years to see someone in charge actually do something." Chloe turned to her stream. "We came for a vacation," she said, "but we witnessed a revolution." Imani glanced around the lobby. She didn't see walls and marble anymore. She saw a symbol of what hospitality could be and what it had failed to protect for far too long. This hotel was never broken because of its decor or design, she said. It was broken because people were trained to smile at some guests and interrogate others. Her eyes moved across the room. That era ends today, and the rebuilding began 3 months later. The Horizon Grand Hotel no longer resembled the place where Imani Wallace had been humiliated in front of dozens of strangers. The marble floors remained polished, the chandeliers still glittered, and the velvet chairs still invited guests to sink into quiet luxury. But the silence that once carried judgment now carried welcome. A framed portrait of Imani now hung near the check-in desk, not for vanity, but for accountability. Beneath it, a plaque read, This space belongs to every guest, no exceptions. Guests walked in and out without fear of being second-guessed based on appearance, accent, or attire. And behind the desk stood Isabel Vargas, now permanently appointed general manager, not just as recognition of courage, but because she redefined what leadership looked like at Horizon. The reform Imani implemented rippled far beyond Seattle. Horizon Hospitality Group launched a sweeping initiative auditing all 57 of its properties across the U.S. Dozens of previously ignored complaints resurfaced, and new staff-wide training protocols were enforced company-wide. Each hotel adopted a new equity compliance panel, rotating guest advisors' anonymous feedback systems, and zero-tolerance enforcement with real accountability. As for the guests who had witnessed the incident that day, they received personal letters of thanks and follow-up calls. Not from public relations interns, but from Imani herself. You stood when others looked away. One message read, "That matters." Chloe Grant and Ethan Cole, whose live streams had ignited national media coverage without a single hashtag, were invited to speak at Horizon's Internal Leadership Summit, where they emphasized the power of real-time accountability. We didn't set out to expose anything. Ethan had said, on stage, we just refused to put our phones down. But even as the company transformed, the past refused to stay buried. 1 week after the incident, Imani received a quiet message from a former hotel manager in Portland, a man who had worked under Arthur years before. His voice, low with guilt, confessed something that cast everything in a darker light. Arthur wasn't just following his own bias, he admitted. There was a quiet directive from regional leadership Price's era. They wanted certain guests treated as non-priority if they didn't match the profile. It wasn't on paper. But we all knew Imani didn't respond with anger. She thanked him for telling the truth and passed the statement to Dana and the legal team. But that single admission revealed the final twist in the story. The Horizon Grand Scandal had never been about one man abusing his power. It was about a system that had quietly enabled it. As news of the confession spread, former employees from other branches began to speak up. An internal Horizon task force was formed to re-interview staff dismissed under questionable circumstances. Several were reinstated. Others received settlements. Imani made sure no one was hired or fired again without a paper trail. And every new manager went through direct accountability orientation. It takes more than policies to rebuild trust, she told her board. It takes proof that silence won't be rewarded and that telling the truth won't cost you your job. Imani's own legacy shifted too. Once known as a discreet billionaire who built a hospitality empire from grit and strategy, she was now publicly celebrated as a reformer. Not because she sought the spotlight, but because she had finally stepped into it to make change permanent. She launched a new division within Horizon. Horizon Forward, a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative focused not on slogans, but measurable outcomes under its first act. Isabel Vargas was named National Advisor for Frontline Guest Experience, and at the end of the inaugural summit, Imani said the words that guests, staff, and survivors of silent discrimination across the country would never forget. Hospitality doesn't begin with the smile you give, it begins with the respect you assume. The audience rose to their feet, not because a CEO had spoken, but because a woman once pushed toward the exit had turned around and opened the door for everyone else. If you believe everyone deserves respect, share this story. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and speak up when silence is no longer an option.